Myst, the Book of Atrus continues as read by the bathroom reader. I am covering for the Plurality Report, who has since ran off with the preternatural dwarven people of the Yukon to live out the rest of his days as an immortal Slulakum. Chapter 18. Atrus sat cross-legged beside the shallow bowl, his eyes closed, his fist clenched, tightly counting. Atrus? He turned, looking up at her. Yes, Catherine? There was a slight flicker of annoyance in her face at the mispronunciation of her name, but she had given up trying to correct him. What are you doing? At the count of 60, he relaxed his hand, letting the fingers unfold. As he did, a small bubble of water, its surface fluid and reflective like a drop of mercury, floated up out of his palm. Atrus looked to her. She had a slightly quizzical look on her face. Water shouldn't do that when it gets warm. No? Then what should water do? Atrus shrugged. Well, it shouldn't float, and it shouldn't give me a stomachache. She laughed, then quickly grew serious again. Atrus stared at her, surprised. It was the first time she had laughed since he had met her, and the change it made to her face was quite remarkable. I'll get you some of the powder. Powder? Catherine gave a single nod. For a moment she simply stared as if trying to fathom something about him. Then, without even the slightest movement, she seemed to shrug and look away. Her eyes were still on him, but she was no longer there, not looking out at him anyway. It was as if briefly she had gone into a trance. Atrus reached out and picked up the brass cooking pot he had been examining earlier, pleased by its symmetry, by the way the double pans, top and bottom linked by 4 strong brass spindles, like all the cooking implements in Age 5, were designed to cope with water which, when heated, rose into the air. Everything here had special catchment lids, and spouts with tiny valves which did not open unless you tilted the thing a certain way. He looked to Catherine again, and saw she was still distracted. What are you thinking? She turned to face him. I'll tell you what I'm thinking. You have those pale eyes and wear those strange eye instruments. What have you to do with Lord Genn? I am Atrus, his son. There was a brief look of triumph in her eyes. Then, as if she suddenly saw what it meant, she took a step backward. So what do you want? He paused as he considered the question, sweeping away the cloud of Genn and all he'd witnessed over the last few years. What do I want? I want to go home, he said softly. Home? To the cleft. The cleft? It's where I was born, he said, where I grew up. It was just a crack, a hole in the earth surrounded by desert, he added, thinking of what Genn had said of it. Yet it was like paradise. And your father lived there with you? Atrus shook his head, looking away as he answered her. No, I didn't know my father, not until I was 14. I grew up with my grandmother, Anna. She fed me, clothed me, taught me. She gave me everything. Catherine stared at him intensely. And then your father came? Atrus nodded. Standing, he brushed himself down, then looked past her down the grassy slope. The village was in the crater behind him, just the other side of the slope, literally in the crater, the mud and daub huts fixed into the crater wall using great wooden stakes, like the rooms in the cleft had been. He smiled, remembering. The first time he had seen it, it had almost been his last. Feigning sleep, he had let the elder of the 2 brothers, Karel, leave the hut, then had slipped out of bed, intending to go outside and look around. It had only been his natural caution that had stopped him falling into the bay 50 feet below. It also explained why the sounds changed in the evening. He had thought that the sea came into a beach close by the hut. He had not understood that it actually came in beneath the hut, let in through a tunnel inlet to the left of the cliffside village. He turned, looking about him. To the left, no more than half a mile distant, lay the forest, its strange golden-leaved trees dominating the view there, their massive branches flattened as if under enormous pressure from the sky. Directly south, on a raised promontory, was the copse in which the temple stood, while over to the right, clearly visible from wherever one stood on the island, was the tree. Catherine stepped up beside him, her eyes on him all the while, almost as if she knew him. Her tone was different now, steady. "I had a dream of you." He turned to face her, recalling the first time she had said it to him in the hut. "A dream?" "Yes," she said, slowly walking down the slope away from him, her green dress flowing about her, her bare feet seeming almost to float upon the grass. "I dreamed of a dead man floating in the pool, and now you're here." "Well," Genn asked, sitting down in front of the young woman, "has anything unusual been happening?" Catherine looked up from the copybook and met her master's gaze, her own eyes innocent. "Nothing unusual." "Good," he said, turning away, sucking deeply on his pipe. "Shall we pick up where we left off?" The lesson went well, but then they always did. Catherine was a good student, his best, and he never had to tell her anything more than once. Some of the other guild members were good at copying, but none of them, with the exception of Catherine, had begun to grasp the true meaning of the symbols they were copying. She, by contrast, had understood at once, and now, after only 2 years' tuition, she was almost fluent. Almost, he thought, thinking of all the key words he had kept from her, certain Garo-Herty words, without which it would be impossible to write. But soon he would begin to give her those keys, one by one, if she was good. He had formulated his plan long before he had imprisoned Atrus. Furious with his son, but determined to fulfill his dream of a great Dawny resurgence, he had found himself wondering if it were not possible to go about things in a different manner. He still needed Atrus, there was no doubt of that, for such talent should not be squandered, yet it seemed impossible to work with him. But did it have to be Atrus at his side? Wouldn't another do just as well? Someone not quite as talented, perhaps, yet certainly more docile than his son. Someone he could control much easier than Atrus. At once he had thought of Catherine. Genn smiled and turned to face her, setting his pipe down on the desk. "There's something I have to tell you, Catherine. Something important." "Master?" She stared back at him, intent yet obedient, her eyes the eyes of the perfect acolyte, the perfect servant. "I want you to prepare yourself. There is to be a wedding, you understand, 30 days from now. I will give instructions to the other guild members as to the ceremony, but you must make special preparations." "Are you to take a bride, master?" "Yes, Catherine," he said, looking at her fondly now. "You are to be my wife. You will sit at my right hand and rule 1,000 worlds with me." "But, master," she said, bowing her head, "I am not deserving of this honor." Genn laughed softly, pleased by her humility. "Maybe not, but I have chosen you, Catherine, and you will prepare yourself. 30 days you have, 30 days, and then the ceremony will take place." Atrus had been looking for Catherine all over the main island, surprised that no one knew where she had gone. Then, suddenly, there she was again, standing among the trees at the edge of the forest. He almost called to her, almost shouted out her name, yet something about the way she was standing there, distracted, made him stop and then double back into the wood. Coming out behind her, one of the massive spongy boles hiding him from her sight. In the mottled shade of the massive branches, her slender figure seemed unreal, a thing of earth and grass, the green of her cloak, the raven black of her hair, blending with the surrounding shadows. Even from where he was standing, Atrus could see that something had disturbed her. Her eyes, which were normally so bright and inquisitive, were now deep in thought, while her hands were clasped tightly in front of her. "What is it?" he asked silently, fearing a natural sympathy for her. Slowly, his feet carefully finding their way over the thick leaf cover between the trees, he moved toward her until he stood less than a dozen feet away. "Catherine?" She did not turn, merely looked up. "Catherine, are you all right?" She nodded. "Shall I walk you back to the village?" "All right," she said quietly, turning and walking beside him as they now moved out from beneath the great overhang of branches into the sloping meadow. Atrus found his linking book where he'd left it in the cliff face and linked back. The chamber was as he'd left it, the age 5 book open on the desk, the ink pots and pen undisturbed. Returning to the desk, Atrus settled in the chair, then drew the book toward him and began to read it, more carefully this time, seeing how each phrase, each small description, contributed to the totality of what he'd seen. Now that he had been there, he understood just how good it really was. The 5th age of Genn was quite remarkable, yet there were clear flaws in the way the book had been put together, particularly in the structure of the writing. Elegant passages lay side by side on the page, each uniquely beautiful, yet disturbingly unrelated to each other. It was the trademark of his father's style, the boldness of Genn's eclecticism. His drawing from such disparate sources was indeed astonishing, close to brilliant. Had Genn built his ages from structural principles, they might have been different, for it was possible that in doing so he might have reconciled the gaps. As it was, his method was piecemeal, and the flaws that resulted quickly compounded into a complex network of interrelated faults that could not be tackled by simple solutions. Atrus turned the final page, nodding to himself as he read the last few entries, seeing there his father's crude attempts to make small changes to Age 5 world to stabilize its inherent faults. "All wrong," he said quietly, wishing he could just score out those final entries, but, remembering what had happened on the 37th age, fearing to do so. No, if he was to make changes, he would do so only with great care and after long and patient deliberation. One could not meddle with an age, at least not with an age as complex as Genn's 5th age. Riven, he thought. She called it Riven, and as he looked up, it was to find Catherine standing there, looking down at him, a large blue book clutched to her chest. Chapter 19. Atrus stood there, staring at Catherine, stunned by her sudden appearance. She quickly looked around her, then set the book down on the table. "I followed you," she said before he could speak. "Saw where you hid your linking book." He glanced at the big, blue-covered book where it lay on the table between them, then pointed to it. "I got it," she said. "From your father." "Got it? How? He doesn't allow books out of his library." She looked directly at him. "I stole it from his study while he was asleep." He stared at her open-mouthed. "But why?" Things were moving far too fast for him. He stood, putting his hands out as if to fend her off. "Slow down. What are you doing in my father's study?" "He takes us there." "Who?" "The guild. He has us copy things from books. He says it saves him time." "The guild?" He laughed. In his mind he saw again how mad his father was, trying to recreate the Donny guilds. She stepped around the desk and, reaching out, pulled down the edge of the choker she was wearing. Beneath it, burned into the flesh, was his father's sign. He met her eyes. "How long ago was this?" She made a face as if she hated to recall it. He placed the mark on me 4 years ago. I was the 4th to have it. Since then, he's increased our number to 10. We are an elite. The other islanders have to do as we say. Your father insists on it." "So why bring me the book?" he asked, laying his hand on the fleckled blue cover. "You can write. I want you to fix our world." Atrus stared back at her for a moment, then went around the desk and sat, opening the book. It was blank. She had stolen a blank book. He looked up at her. "Why should I do that?" "Because you must." "Must? Who says I must?" "Don't you understand? It's falling apart. I'm asking for your help." Atrus sat back. "Go on." "It's been happening for a while now. There have been small tremors in the earth, and cracks, and schools of dead fish have been floating into the bay, and then the tree—" He waited, his stomach muscles tensed, remembering what had happened on the 37th age. There, too, it had begun with little things. Instability. There was a fatal instability in all his father's worlds. "The great tree is dying," she said. "Why didn't you say this to me earlier?" "Because I wasn't sure of you at first." "Why?" he laughed. "Because of your power, the power that your father has, the power to create and destroy worlds." "You think I have that power?" "Haven't you?" He hesitated, then nodded. "I can write." "Then help us, Atrus." He let out a long, sighing breath. What if this were another trap? After all, how likely was it that she had managed to steal books from his father's study? Then again he remembered the voice he'd heard that time when he'd been standing at the bottom of the steps that led up to Genn's study. He should have known even then that Genn was bringing people back from his ages. "Okay," he said. "I'll help you." He paused. "But I need more books. More blank books." "Why?" He studied her momentarily. "There are things I have to try out. Experiments." "I have more books on Riven. You'll need to help me carry them." "You've... You mean you stole more than one?" "Yes. Your father, he trusts me. He—" "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing. Just that we'd better be getting back to pick up the books. The quicker you get to work—" He shook his head. "Why are you in such a hurry? It can't be rushed. To fix an age—" She leaned closer. "There'll only be 30 days. Atrus sat back. "I don't understand. What's happening in 30 days? But Catherine did not answer him. Instead, she reached across and, placing her hand over the age 5 image on the page, linked back, leaving Atrus staring at the empty air, open-mouthed. Oh. His heart pounding in his chest. Ahem. He linked back to the grassy plateau beside the pool. Catherine was waiting for him. Taking his hand, she hurried him through the trees and along the edge of the cliff top opposite the tree. Water lapped softly at the rocks 100 feet below. Looking at the tree across that narrow gap, Atrus could see little wrong with it. From this distance it seemed the epitome of rude health, a vast symbol of natural fecundity, yet he had no reason to doubt Catherine. "It would be best if we were not seen," she said, hurrying him down a narrow path that hugged the cliff, then up a curving twist of wooden steps set into the earth between steep slopes of grass. He shrugged, then went on with her, up the final few feet of the path, and onto a lush stretch of grass that nestled between two spurs of the great tree's massive trunk. "Here," Catherine said, beckoning him across. He went over to where she stood, then frowned deeply, seeing at once what she meant. Just beside her, the bark was deeply split, a huge crack reaching in to breach the medullary ray that carried the tree's necessary nutrients, and on, deep into the sapwood. The split was large enough for him to walk into. "You see," she said softly, her green eyes troubled. "This was his punishment." "His punishment? For what?" She walked past him, then sat, looking out across the water toward the copse, the white stone of the temple barely visible among that rich dark green. "One of the guild spoke out of turn. He questioned something the Lord Genn said to him. Your father was angry. I've never seen him so angry. He had us sacrifice the man." Atrus went across and crouched, facing her. "What do you mean?" "We fed him to the sea." She put her hands out to stop him. "It doesn't matter. What does matter is that he threatened us, all of us, gave us a warning. 'Question me again,' he said, 'and I shall destroy your world, for just as I made it, I can unmake it. Look to the great tree,' he said. 'I shall leave my sign upon it.'" Another fissure, Atrus thought, remembering once more what had happened on the 37th age. Yes, everywhere he goes he leaves his mark, like a signature of his incompetence. And is that why I'm here? Is that the reason why he imprisoned me with the Age 5 book? To clean up after him, to put right what he has so abjectly failed to make good? He looked back at Catherine. "And the other guild members, do they know what you plan to do?" She shook her head. "They would kill me if they did. They are in fear of your father, Atrus. They tremble before his every word." "And yet one of them gainsayed him." Catherine looked down, as if ashamed. "That was your fault?" he asked after a moment. "You influenced him?" She looked up, her eyes beseeching him now. "I didn't mean to. I only thought—" She took a long, shuddering breath, then, much quieter, "I thought Lord Genn might listen to him. I thought your father was a reasonable man." "My father? No," Atrus said matter-of-factly. "My father is mad." He turned and looked, seeing in the distance beyond the temple mound another promontory. "What's there?" he asked, trying to remember what Genn had written in the book. "That's where the guild members live. That's where we have our enclave." For some reason the thought of her living alone with 9 men disturbed him. "Are they like you?" She laughed, then patted the grass beside her. "What do you mean, like me? Young?" He went to shrug, then nodded. "No," she said. "Most of them are old, even older than my father. Genn seems to like them that way, more docile, I guess, apart from Avon." "Avon?" She nodded, sucking in her lips a moment. "My friend. He was the one Genn sacrificed." Atrus looked past her a moment, his eyes drawn to the dark shape of the split in that massive trunk. "Did you love him?" "Love?" The word came out surprised, but after a moment she nodded. "He was like a brother to me, as dear to me as Karel or Elar. When the other guild members took him—" "I'm sorry," he said when she didn't go on. "I feel responsible somehow." You shouldn't," she said, looking sharply at him. "After all, he's not been particularly kind to you, has he? What kind of father imprisons his son?" He stared at her. "How is it you know so much?" She looked away then. "Because your father tells me. Oh, some things he doesn't even realize he's telling me. He likes to talk to himself, and sometimes he forgets. Sometimes I'm in his study, copying, and—" "Hold a moment," Atrus said. "Tell me, why does he do that?" She blinked again. "It's as I said. It speeds up his work." "Yes, but what does he want?" His eyes held hers a moment, begging an answer, his head following hers when she tried to avoid his gaze. She smiled. "I guess," she began, sitting up a little and turning herself to face him square on, "I guess he wants to teach us how to write." "Is that what he told you?" She nodded. "But that's impossible. No one but Donnie can write. It simply doesn't work for anyone else." She was staring at him curiously now. "You're sure of that?" He nodded. "It was the first thing he ever taught me about the art, and the books, the histories, confirm it. Time and again they stress the fact." Strangely, Catherine seemed relieved. "What is it now?" he asked, puzzled by her reaction. "I just thought, well, in my book." "Your book?" She stared at him a moment longer, then nodded. "Would you like to see it?" He shrugged. "Okay." "Then come," she said, taking his hand and pulling him up after her. "I'll show you." Catherine had always been somewhat uncomfortable with the idea that she could make a book. Somehow the whole notion, which at first had fascinated and intrigued her, now horrified her, for if she could conjure up her dreams from ink and paper, what did that make her? A mere figment, just another conjuration of the Lord Genn's fitful imagination. She turned, looking across the shadowed hut to where Genn's son Atrus sat cross-legged on the narrow bed, reading her book. So different from his father, so true. Her eyes went to the young man again, finding it strange the way his presence so disturbed her. It was just... Atrus looked up from the book and met her eyes, and she instantly knew what it was. It was his kindness, his simple, natural kindness. "This is quite beautiful," he said. "I've never read anything like it. It's like nightfall over the desert, or like the cleft when it was filled with stars." She went across and sat beside him. "The writing, well, as I said, the writing's wonderful. It's poetic, but in practical terms, it's riddled with contradictions, I'm afraid. It breaks almost every single law of Dani writing. It has no structure, no architecture, and some of these symbols, I've never seen them before. I'm not even sure they mean anything. Where did you learn them? Gehn never taught these to me." Catherine shrugged. "For such a place to exist," Atrus sighed, then closing the book, handed it back to her. "I'm afraid it wouldn't work, but it does paint wonderful pictures in my mind." She smoothed her fingers over the pale lemon cover. The green and light blue flecks in it had always reminded her of grass and water, the predominant yellow of the sun. Fecund it was, like the world surrounding her. But inside... "That's good," she said. "It must be like a dream." He stared at her, not understanding. "When I go there..." He shook his head. "But you can't." "It was just like my dreams," she said, turning to face him again. No, he said forcefully, taking the book back from her. "It simply wouldn't work. Writing isn't like that. It's a science, a precisely structured equation of words." She leaned across him, then opened the book, pointing to the descriptive image on the right-hand page. It was dark, so intensely dark that he had thought it blank. But there was something there. He looked to her. "I want you to see it." "It's..." he said, softer now, the word almost a whisper, yet even as he said it, she leaned across him and placed his hand upon the image, smiling at him, her smile dissolving in the air as he linked.